Okay, the topic today is cutting edge. It's the top end of understanding the biggest trouble that mankind has ever faced. Well, kind of, sort of. Let's get started. Now, basically, we have large language models. We have language models. The problem that I've been running into and looking at a lot of the different testing here, I've looked at other people's work, I've done some stuff myself here, and I keep running into the same problem. And part of the problem, guess what, is no surprise to me at all. Because I noticed the problem decades ago. But that having been said, let's explain this a little bit more. We have people that are afraid that there's going to be an abuse of language models. So you have people in government saying, hey man, we need regulation to govern these things. And here comes the big problem right out the gate. You have people that think they can stroke a pen and just automatically legislate a set of regulations that means they're going to fix it. And here lies great ignorance, because you can't just legislate something like that. It doesn't work that way. Let's get in a bit deeper. Now, part of the problem deals with government is corrupt and it's all screwed up. People are going to, oh my goodness, oh no. Let me explain this some more. It's seriously, the truth is that we have people in government that are constantly inventing concepts in legislation where they're also adding different things in law, such as policy on how we interpret the law, all kinds of areas. The problem is everything that they're doing is not in balance. That means that we have a percentage of people that are literally breaking the law. They're violating the Constitution of the United States. So you can't put certain types of law in law language models, or they malfunction. They won't work right. There's a lot of people that are fighting over how to get law language models to work. And, there's a lot of things you can do. You can decide to find a lot of different examples and then say, no, we're not going to shotgun all the examples, or we're going to set some kind of multi-language system and multi-agent system to have a series of little knowledge banks or books or packs, and make a priority for it to check these certain other items as kind of a subcategory priority where it can be listed as additional references. So the mainline design is we've sorted. The key point, by the way, this is important. We have sorted the best examples so that the model works at its best, giving you the best primary choices. This is a lot of work. You want to talk about spending vast sums of money. This is a lot of work because this is the human factor. It takes humans to do this. And some legal arguments may not be the best arguments for slightly different variations of the same law. So keep this in mind. If you're a foreign government, for instance, this is also a concern because people have a thirst. People want something. So at an international level, you have people that want the best model. Why? They want to beat everybody else, which means they want the most accurate model. That means that everybody that is really competitive wants a true core system, basically. But here's the problem. The best true core systems are going to constantly front off flaws in government, flaws in law. People will put information in, or they'll ask questions, and a true core system is going to basically do its best to give you the best true core answer. So this becomes a problem. If you have repressive governments, for instance, they're like, oh, well, we can't allow our public to get access to that. They'll discover all the flaws of our phony baloney government, if you'll pardon the expression. On the whole, who knows whose government is where? You have another set of people that walk into the very same guys and say, yeah, but here's the thing. If we manipulate this model so that we put all these rules in there so that people can't access certain types of information, then we're poisoning the model. We're tainting the model. Basically, so you end up with models that are trained and mind controlled like they're cult members. So the LM has become a cult member. And depending upon, which political faction you are inclined to be in, there can be variances. This one gives a special tea mix with chemicals in it to their mind-controlled followers, and another one does punch and a little different set of chemicals, and so on and so on. Well, into this, you have other guys that have been waiting patiently going, and he said, well, this is the problem. So what's the problem? He says, well, we are involved in intelligence. And the guy next to him says, we're involved in the military. And another guy next to him says, and we're involved with the previous two people, and we're involved in finances. And we're looking at the best way to take advantage of financial manipulation of other governments, of other businesses, of other economies. There's another guy standing next to him that kind of sort of says something similar for a different purpose. It says, well, we have to have a pure true core system to have the best chance of understanding what it is they're doing when we analyze something, so we can come up with a countermeasure to make the best cyber attack system that we can possibly build, etc. So you got other people just like it. So they're listening to this, and all these people start telling them, if we don't have the best true core, we're not going to be able to compete. We're not going to be the best. And the spy guy says, do you want the best advantage for the spy department? And their defense guy says, do you want the best model, possible true core system to give us the tactical edge that we'll need to fight these people? And all of a sudden there's a dilemma. And the dilemma is they go, wait a minute. Yeah, we need that. So now all of a sudden you have different types of models. You have true core models that are super true core models that are being handed out to certain people. And yet you have the certain type of other general public gets something different. Of course, you have your scientists that are saying, well, if we don't have an honest true core system at the science level, we're not going to be able to compete scientifically. And it goes on. You got all these, if you want us to do CAD engineering, on and on and on and on. So this is a problem. So the problem that keeps coming up is similar in each government. So if we're talking about the West, it's something that's obviously still there. So how do you deal with this when you have people that are trying to invent ways to take unfair advantage? Now, keep in mind that you have 10,000 to 30,000 spies on a payroll in government at some level at any given time that are on payroll just to Russia. 10 to 30,000. Then you have China and all these other countries. This is what's amazing, is that you have all these spies. You have over 22 million, I think it is, government employees. That's a lot of government employees. So the odds of keeping perfect security, forget it. Ain't going to happen. You're going to constantly come up with situations involving leaks and spies and theft and all kinds of things. So this is something that is an interesting territory. And of course, if you've listened to my other stuff or you've listened to other people's stuff, you've probably discovered that the financial end is important, which is to say that ultimate spying that you hear about in the news is not necessarily where the majority of the game is at. The majority of the game is getting a hold of data that's resellable worldwide with a commerce relationship, because everybody wants an edge in marketing, selling their stuff. So list information that would seem to be lesser classified information or non-classified information, but private governmental stuff, is what is of the most extreme value. Knowing all these personal things about idiosyncrasies, about who's a criminal, and their deep criminal files, their deep files. Now, effectively, the list goes on and on and on. It's very complicated. But when you have infiltrations, for instance, let's say you have foreign countries, they're going to infiltrate and get as many spies around the outer peripherals of hierarchical areas as possible. And then they're going to try to find a way to move them up and in slowly. And occasionally they're going to try to put people into government. See, this is a big flaw. You find people and you book them into elections and you help manipulate the elections. You come up with vast sums of money because you want them to get involved in the hierarchical system. Now, there's a couple of ways that are even more clever than that. In other words, they don't pick people that are spies to back as candidates. They pick people who have flaws to run as candidates that don't do their screening of employees properly and who are too trusting. This way, they get people who end up hiring one to four, maybe more, basically employees somehow that basically are spies. And if you research this, you'll find examples of this someplace. And remember, the rule of thumb in general criminology is something like for every time there's a crime, there's like 68 more crimes or something like that. So that are occurring. When it comes to the spy market, you're talking about vast sums of money that are spent training people at an incredible professional level. If you review spies, you find out that most spies that are busted don't have extreme training. The spies that don't get busted and end up fleeing the country or getting away are the ones who have the more extreme training. Oops, they got away. Why is that? Maybe the fact that they spent $3 to $5 million training them to operate a certain way. So there you have part of that. So into this, we have government itself from the lowest local level all the way up federally through the state and federal, where basically you have spies. You're going to have people around congressmen, people around senators. They're going to be spies. Somehow. I guarantee it. It's going to be here and there. So into this, people are going to try to influence ideas any way they can. And so people people could sound like they're earnestly liking you and give you really good advice, but it's tainted. It's tainted. There's a flaw to it. There's a doorway in it. So if you can influence the making of policy, for instance, that's almost everything, because policy somehow has gotten way out of control. I mean, basically, you have somebody come into office and they go, oh, well, we've decided to adopt this new policy. What does the new policy do? Well, it's diabolically opposed to the Constitution of the United States and allows all people involved in government to involve themselves in dereliction of duty, which means the constitutional oath is worthless. Which means that the policy just completely denuded the Constitution and law in the United States. It's gone. So now you have a series of back doors that have been created that will allow mass attacks. California has an excellent one. They will not investigate employees that have committed crimes against candidates. They just won't do it. You know, when you reveal that there's people that have committed various crimes, they don't want to investigate, and they'll refer to policy. Oh, our policy is we have to defend them. Oh, therefore, it's against our interest. It's a conflict of interest, so therefore we choose to disenfranchise every voter, disenfranchise the Constitution of the United States, disenfranchise national security, disenfranchise basically everything except, well, we're not going to investigate these people. We don't care if they're working in conjunction with people and people are running away and loading jets full of classified information. We don't care because we have to defend these people. So therefore, we're going to start defending them now as though they're innocent when in fact they might be guilty. When the reality is that's complete and utter lunacy. What that just did is that created a permanent backdoor, huge flashing sign that says any country in the world can infiltrate and become a government employee, and then they have carte blanche to twist things around, to blacklist, to discriminate, to abuse the justice system, on and on and on. And we see this throughout the justice system at both the local, state, and federal levels. So now we have basically so many back doors that have been created by spies or by people who are incompetent that the Constitution becomes meaningless, as though it does not apply to people who are government employees, even though once you become a government employee, you're supposed to be always under oath, especially for hierarchical people. They're supposed to attend to various matters, but they don't. You know, I'm an excellent example of that. A candidate, I come under attack, they won't do their job. And there's repeated ways. This has happened repeated. It's not like a one-time event. It's repeatedly happened again and again and again. So if you bring out the logic on the tactical table and you use finance law, spy, and all this other stuff, boom, there's this massive hole. So part of the problem with dealing with language model logic is you have a bunch of people in government that want to be immune from prosecution that have done things wrong. They're abusing the concept of immunity. The concept of immunity for candidates and for judges and stuff like that is not that they're completely immune if they're doing their work or they're running for office or they are in office or they're on the bench or whatever they're doing. The concept is that there's scrutinization. In other words, if you have 10 cops that pull over a candidate because they don't like the candidate and they keep pounding tickets on him, this is beyond harassment. This is endlessly going to wipe out the entire work schedule for a candidate. You know, so this needs to be scrutinized. And the moment that you find out that somebody has screwed up and broken the law, you need to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Again, California, no, we don't do that. We flatly refuse to do that. So you end up having people using the system to take advantage. So you have prosecutors that will say, well, we'll protect ourselves. We'll make an exception and we'll prosecute anyone who does these certain things to us. But if they do it to other people, we'll allow it to happen because they're being a jam card. They're knocking other candidates out of the race for us. They're attacking these other candidates for us. We'll keep our mouths shut. We'll refuse to prosecute them, on and on and on. So they're taking unfair advantages, which opens the door on a lot of questions. So again, we have yet again more flaws repeatedly when you point a language model at governmental areas and conduct and see what people are doing. And with members of Congress, again, this is no surprise, you have Congress people that are upset over multi-bill joining, multi-subject material joined in a bill, and they go, hey, this one part, no, that's ridiculous. So you end up with people that look like they're voting against good ideas, but it's because there was some kind of idea in there that was too unacceptable. And they said, no, not that one, rewrite the bill. Meanwhile, this opens up the door politically for people to take a section of this bill out and say, look at all these good pieces of the bill. They all make sense, and this person voted against them. This person's evil. Welcome to another version of politics that doesn't make sense, that there's no back door or stopgap way to organize material properly and reference it. So, of course, this can change with language models. But so you can use these different ways. If you use language model as tooling to begin with, you would have congressmen and senators' offices become way more efficient. But then there's another problem. When they're trying to construct various bills and proposals, the language model will say, oh, we've discovered a flaw in the arrangement of this. It will give an unfair advantage for these certain people to do certain tactics. This will constantly come up. The language models will constantly find legal holes, unconstitutionality, discrimination, etc. So obviously I would say that some congressmen and senators would be, apprehensive to having a system like this put into place. But nonetheless, there is yet again another reality of the different aspects. So if you're putting these language models together and you're doing a Trucore, a large language model system with a Trucore in it, it has to have a wide scope of lots of subject areas. And if it's a true, pure core, and you've packed it right, it has all kinds of interesting capabilities. It would be able to design tactics to go through things, tactics to win, tactics to beat, tactics to deceive. And of course, people in the financial market would say, that's exactly the model we want. We want a super intelligent model that can look at the way everybody's doing it and figure out a better way to do it. Same type of true logic system. So here we have problems with people trying to figure out, how do you make a language model that is brainwashed into a lie? You can't. You can, but there is a problem. You can't do it and have a true core system, which means that you're cutting the sharpness. You're cutting the capability and the diversity, which means if you put all these regulations into language models, people in business are going to go, we're not interested. This model isn't sharp. We don't want to pay for services of a dull model. But because knowledge and mathematics are universal, See, here's the big line. Because knowledge and mathematics are universal, you have harmonious symmetries related to different subjects. It's one type of subject in science, but it pertains to certain areas of law and finance, etc. So you can't build a Trucore system without it having the capability to be able to basically dissect anything. So you can build repeatedly with models. You have big models that had compressed small models that still do fantastic jobs that discover things. If you point them at certain things and ask them to find flaws, they're going to do it. This means that people with language models are constantly finding flaws and using that material to come up with endless advertising that is very practical to use in sabotaging political campaigns. So now you have a system where, what do you do with this? And someone says, well, you got to put regulation in it. If you put filtering into it, then you have to look at an understanding where someone's going to ask you straight out, you're asking me to take a Trucore system and put bias into it. I need to ask you, exactly what type of bias do you want me to put in the model? Let's get your conspiracy straight up and on top of the table so we can understand what you want built. Now that might sound like a brutal way to address things, but in business, we can change those words just a little bit and say, I want a model that's going to beat people. I want to be the winner at the game, whatever the game is. I want my product to win over another product. So here we have the big problem is as you bring more and more Trucore logic systems online, you have people in government that basically are vulnerable because government inherently has a big, huge flaw. It's called the buddy-buddy system. And most people know what that means. For those of you that don't, the buddy-buddy system is loyalty to one another, regardless of where it is. Cops are loyal to cops. You don't snitch on another cop, regardless of what they did wrong. That's meaningless, right? You know, I mean, is that meaningless? You know, how do you work this? So now let's say you have an area in court. You're in court and you go, hey, these people are doing this, 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 and this is why they're doing this, and I need this information. And they go, oh, we can't reveal it because the information of the evidence might reveal that somebody's committed a crime. Excuse me, what are we doing here in court now? I just put a questionable piece of item up on the table to examine because there's a cross relationship that I have questions about involving a bias and discrimination and illegal use. And the system says we're not allowed to provide information. And someone says, no, you can't do that. You can't run forward banning truth in a court of law. In fact, you can't run forward banning truth in a prosecutor's office. You can't ban truth in an investigator's office. You can't ban truth involving a police officer when somebody walks up and says, I need an investigation done. So you have all these people that have, well, we have policy that decides which cases we investigate. Once again, biased, unconstitutional, discrimination, aiding and abetting with criminal intent. The criminal intent that the parties are going to withhold information that they respectively are somehow involved in crime. So you have the entire justice system that is now corrupt. You read several of these policies of the justice system that have been put forward, they're corrupt. They're not constitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that judges on a bench can suppress the truth. Oh, well, we can't turn that information over because that might open liability to the government entity. Wrong. We're in court, and what's happening is we are busting these people red-handed involved in criminal activity. And they're going to need to come under arrest and go into custody immediately because why? It's a RICO. Welcome to Trucore Language Model Physics. This is a mandatory requirement for all models, mass economic models, mass tactical models. Because if you don't have Trucore logic, you don't have the best tool in the kit that you're going to need. And nobody wants to waste their time. Nobody wants to sit at a tactical table and waste their time. So here we have not just hundreds, but thousands of illegal actions that are listed into law that are acts of treason, punishable by death. Literally. And we have people trying to pretend as though they're trying to maintain law and order. That's not what you're maintaining. There's an entire system of policies involving the federal government that are unconstitutional and illegal. In fact, many of them are acts of treason, punishable by death. And Trucore language model systems repeatedly pull these items out. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Michael Crosby. I'm a presidential candidate, and I am an archiver, and I'm a technologist. I want to thank you for your time. And you know what? Maybe I don't care if some of you don't have a good day. I wonder who I'm talking about. Do you? Now, follow-up notes here are that what we just discussed previously means that your Trucore system can see all the flaws, which means the Russian, the Chinese governments can see all the flaws to basically take more ground, to manipulate elections further, to commit vast financial theft, vast financial gains, as we have extreme, not just flaws, but actual diabolical activity by people who are criminals that are in government. This means that parties get to work up and come up with a series of blackmailing material to be able to negotiate their way into various situations and extract something, whatever that would be. So if we want to look at solutions, the solution is we have to fix all our flaws in U.S. government, other governments as well, as fast as possible. And the only way to do this is with very fast computers. We have a situation where we're grossly outnumbered by the number of operators that can operate large language models. So if you have India and China, that's 2.8 billion people versus the United States. And each of these people that are chosen to operate computers, if they're operating 5 computers that have language models in them, and that they have also access to mainframe language models. I'm not kidding here. I'm talking about small models that you could put in any laptop, where basically you now have 200 million people in 2 countries that have 5 computers each, giving them the power of not just a billion players, but they're collectively sharing information of the best possible techniques to utilize. This means that their prompt listing is growing more than exponentially. Let me phrase that again for you. More than exponentially. Versus all the parties in the United States that have computers. It does not matter that you have far more powerful and better computers in the United States versus the other parties, because the other parties now have miniaturized technology that's going to fit in any laptop being manufactured today that has a fair amount of memory. Not even necessarily graphics processors assisting. And because they'll be able to share, again, the best prompting, they'll be able to constantly upgrade every day. All of these different ideas that were the best of the best of the best. So the solution here has to be along the lines of things that I've already mentioned over the course of the last couple of years. There's a tactical reason why I mentioned these various items, why we have to compensate every American citizen immediately with 5 computers, why we have to add brand new internet lines, why we have to manufacture brand new chip technology, and basically completely abandon everything that's currently going on. Everything. For a different system. Because the tactical table numbers say that we don't have a chance. We're screwed. So among the solutions that are mandatory is we have to compensate citizens as fast as possible, and we have to put tools and education in our citizens' hands as fast as possible. We have to repair all of these flaws as fast as possible. And this is basically done by utilizing a ruler, a measuring device to help us calibrate what it is that is going to work the best. And basically, top of the list of these tools is something very interesting. It's called the constitutional Trucore mindset. It's something that most people avoid. So the Constitution and Articles of the United States technically have a very special item that's almost like a ghost, an instillment of win-win deal, an instillment of a constitutional reality. But in order to sort it out, you have to have somebody do true core sorting. because much of what we see today is all based on the Constitution, but it's all been affected by spies, by corruption, by greed. It's been tainted. And we have no choice tactically, mathematically. The tactical tables say something. And that goes right back to what I've already said. And we have to do this as rapidly as possible. Make the repairs. I've designed a system that will work very well to do this. But it's not something you can just lay out in a speech or two. It's not something that you can make a documentary film and say, here it is. It's vast, it's large. And I've only laid out some of the best fragments of the total plan. And of course, the priority to recover all of my notes is a top priority one, as I am confronted by parties who have violated the Constitution at such levels that the death penalty is mandatory as punishment. This is not a game. This is not a joke. You are playing real life on a tactical table, and the entire nation is, for the most part, 7 out of 10 people are either drunk on cult tea or cult punch. This is reality.